We got it. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to my June webinar. Hard to believe it's this late in the year already, and it's summery. It's really nice out. The weather today was spectacular here. Not too hot, very pleasant weather. Was able to do a little weeding and gardening. So I'm feeling on top of it. Last month, during the group clearing session, I had a little bit of an epiphany. It was not a new thought, actually. It was more of a memory or remembering something that I had attended to long ago, and you've heard me talk about. And that was the profundity of the whole idea of healing from the very source of good health in the physiology, which is the field of pure consciousness or being. And when I first created my website many years ago, I wrote a section called Wellness Based on Being, which I actually started to look up, and then in my violent nature, I got distracted and didn't actually look it up. But buried in my website, there's a section that is about, that reveals more of the theory of what I do. And there's that section is Wellness Based on Being. And I think for those of you participating, and I believe most of you who were there last week are here this week, or month, pardon me, you'll remember that it came in a moment where we had done some very profound work, and we had dived very deeply into being and into that field of pure consciousness. And we're working with the influences, particularly the karmic influences, that came to us at that level. And, or not at that level, pardon me, it came to us at the level at which transformation takes place. And so we were working at that level of being, which is where all the intelligence that is us, that comprises us, was existent. And it really struck me at the time that was really a profound thing to say. And so I wanted to devote a whole webinar to this most fundamental idea, which goes right back to where I started when I started practicing energy healing many years ago. I'm just sitting here. I don't know if I can convey this adequately. I'll try through this webinar. Just how profound this idea really is. When I was studying Ayurveda, also many years ago, when I was studying Ayurveda, I learned about the potential for healing from the level of being. But the way I was actually taught Ayurveda was from a much more Western approach. And I think Maharishi did it that way. I think he did. I'm not sure he ever really explained it. But I think the reason he did it that way was to make it understandable to Western physicians. He wanted us to understand, that you have a problem, and so you analyze the problem, and you look at the causes, and then you take steps to change that. And you put into the system, the human system, herbs and other things that you can do, including purification, which is taking things out, putting things in to take them out. That by doing that, you enliven that fundamental level of intelligence in the body and make a person healthy. You, in a sense, transcend the disease, whatever the disease process is, even if it's karma, which means it's set very deeply in the intelligence of the universe, and sometimes very strongly. But you're living in that state where the expression of that intelligence is being, you can say, guided. That's a nice way to put it. That intelligence is being guided to appear in a certain way, which may on the surface we call dis-ease or disease, and we feel ill in some way. And it may be an acute problem, which means short-lived and often self-correcting, or it may be a chronic problem, something that's ongoing and hasn't really changed. And particularly when we talk about ongoing things, we have to raise the question, well, what is the potential for healing from the level of being? Is there some limit? Because we don't see people generally with long-term, long-standing problems, like people years after a stroke. That's a good example. They're partially paralyzed and maybe have trouble speaking, things like that. And they don't seem to get better. And so we need to explain all of that. We need to understand all of that. But what we really need to understand is the enormous potential for healing that exists in that level of being. And that's what I really would like to make clear tonight, so that this idea of operating from that level of being is really both clear, but is a motivation, is a compelling energy within us, so that we feel, frankly, inspired to seek healing and to seek wellness. And that can be mental wellness, that can be physical wellness, that can be what we like to call spiritual wellness, which is the sense of I am okay. I am feeling good about myself. I have well-being. Well-being is such a great word, and it's one of the reasons why I called the practice that I operate the Partnership for Well-Being, because I work with people, not on them really, but I truly work with them. And you've all experienced this, those of you who've done sessions with me. I work with people to enliven that intelligence that guides and structures the creation and functioning of their body. I was just thinking here. That's why I paused for a moment. I was thinking a few random thoughts. And one of those random thoughts was at a time when I was learning Ayurveda, there was quite a bit of attention being given in the popular media about spontaneous healing. And several physicians gained some national and international notoriety for giving accounts as physicians of patients that went through miraculous healings. And they used the term miraculous because it meant that people got well who absolutely were not expected to get well. And I guess I was pretty much open to that idea already, because as I became a physician and was going through training, medical school, and then residency, and particularly in residency, I saw people live who never should have, who were so sick and nothing was working. And then by some miracle, they got well. There wasn't a lot of them, but it happened occasionally. And I also saw the opposite happen. I saw people die who never should have, who just weren't that sick, but something had happened. And it made it very clear to me that there were factors at play in the healing process that were beyond the physician's ability to understand, to see clearly, and to influence. And so as a physician, if you gained the necessary humility, and most of the people I was with, fortunately, I think really did, gain that humility that was necessary to say, as a physician, you do your best. You do what you think should be done. And you try to keep up to date with all the latest ideas about how to do stuff. But you're not in control of the outcome. You're not in control of the outcome. whether a person lives or dies is in your hands, but you're not in control of it. Now, what that means is if you mess up, you might kill them. And it means that if you do a really good job, then even somebody who appears to be terminally ill may turn around. And I saw cases where physicians made mistakes. Not a lot of them, but I did see a few. And it's very saddening because I thought the physicians in those cases perhaps were not paying enough attention. And there are a million reasons why that happens. Physicians are often overworked. They're going too fast. And sometimes there is a lack of humility. They think they know too much. They think they know better. And so they mess up. But fortunately, that does not actually happen very often. And by the way, this doesn't actually have a lot to do with the physician's personality. I saw a doctor recently for myself. That's the stuff that's bothering me, itching it over here. Stop it. Don't do that. And I must say, this physician had the worst bedside manner I think I've run into in a really long time. He had no bedside manner is really what it was. And he was definitely not interested, and he was definitely on a clock. And I had questions, naturally, because I was a physician, of course, but I had questions as a patient. And it was really struck by his lack of bedside manner. He was trying to get out the door, and I wouldn't let him. I just kept asking questions till I was satisfied. So there are physicians, and I thought he did a very good job, by the way. I wasn't questioning his ability. I was questioning the way he conducted himself. But I have known physicians whose competence was in question. There's an old joke. I probably have told it before, and I'm going to tell it again because it's one of my favorites. And the joke is, what do they call the medical student who graduates last in his class in medical school? Last in his class. But he graduates. They call him doctor. When you go into a doctor's office, he's got a shingle, as we call it, a certificate on the wall that says he's a graduate of a medical school. And then there's usually some other certificates that attest to his being licensed to practice. And there's nothing on those certificates that says that this guy was the last one in his class, or that he was the first, or that he was somewhere in the middle. It doesn't say whether he's conscientious or not, only that he completed the required training. And he's met the minimum requirements. You can't criticize him for that. Hopefully he did the best he could. Hopefully. And hopefully we'll do the best by you. Anyway, I've gotten off the topic a little bit, but it's all relevant to the idea at what level are we working? And we're working as regular physicians, we work at the level, I can say we, I've been retired for some time, but I can still say we. We work at a level where there are things that we can measure. And these days, that's an awful lot of stuff. People sometimes have me look at their lab work and x-ray findings and so on, various studies that are done just to help them understand them. And there is a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff, particularly in the field of genetics now. Huge amount of information related to genetics and disease. And I'm not really up on that, I have to say. I know a little bit about it. But it's an exciting breakthrough because a lot of times we can know the person's potential for disease. We've known for over a century that many characteristics about getting sick were inherited. And we're beginning to learn a lot more about what genes are responsible for what problems. And so we can test people. We can even test babies in utero, often in just the mother's blood. So most remarkable, most remarkable. The advances in modern medicine are astounding, even to me. And I've watched them coming over the years, and certainly was eager to know the latest. And it just astounds me what is coming, what has come, and what is coming. And of course, with surgical approaches, the ability to do, for instance, cataracts. The first cataract surgery I saw was, I'll have to say, kind of a gross affair. Gross means not disgusting; it means crude. But it was successful. It worked. Now it's a slick procedure. It's 20 minutes max, start to finish. Things like appendectomies. They don't open people up anymore. Well, they open them up, but only with tiny holes in the abdomen, and they go in and fish out the appendix, pull it out through the hole. It's just incredible what they do. So there've been enormous advances. But let's talk about the really interesting stuff. On the way to the really interesting stuff, we have to talk about karma. Karma is a very difficult thing. There is a sense in which everything we go through is karma, but that's way too simplistic. And of course, when we think of karma, we usually think of good karma and bad karma. Good karma is karma that we like, and bad karma is the karma that we don't like. Usually it involves some pain and suffering. And so we prefer good karma. Karma comes to us, we are told, on the basis of things that we did in the past. And to a considerable extent, that's true. But if you want a really good discussion on karma, read the book of Job. I've suggested this before, from the Western Bible, but the Old Testament, the book of Job. It's one of the very few actually long stories in the Bible. And in it, Job is questioned while he's sitting there having lost everything and feeling very badly about he is in bad condition. And but he maintains his faith in God. And if this is what God wants of me, then this is what I'll endure. And people come to him and they raise points about karma. And so there's this marvelous, and it's long, discussion of the philosophy of karma. And throughout it, Job, in a lack of humility, or what others think is a lack of humility, says, no, I'm a righteous person. I have done nothing to offend God, and I believe in God, and I worship God, and I do everything I'm supposed to do. And if this is what he wants for me, this is what I will endure. And people go, oh, you have no humility. You've obviously sinned. They're drawing that conclusion from what he's gone through. And he goes, no. So in the end, he gets restitution. But in the end, he also demands that God reveal himself to him. And God basically says, who are you to tell me what I have to do? And he turns Job into a behemoth, a land monster, and then into a Leviathan, a sea monster. I hope I have that right. And in that, Job gets to see what omnipotence really is. So my segue through this was to get to omnipotence, and to that place in our existence where we can enliven the very intelligence of nature. And what are we enlivening it to do? To change the course of karma. And sometimes we can do that, and sometimes we can't do that. As Job supposedly reached restitution in the story, but the story could just as well have ended with Job dying in the state that he was in, of poverty and sickness, having lost all of his land and animals and wives and everything else. So we get to a point when we're dealing with karma where we have to just accept the fact that the karma exists and then ask for forgiveness and apologize. I'm sorry. You can use the whole Ho'oponopono if you like. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And then I am grateful for this opportunity to live and to live the way it is destined for me to live. Now, that is not to say that we can't try to change that. And one of the most profound ways of changing it that Maharishi taught us was yagya, Vedic performances to change the course of destiny, to change the karmic influence. And yagyas are extremely powerful, and I have seen real miracles. People in the intensive care unit, yagyas, which are performed in India, by the way, producing miraculous recovery, miraculous changes. Don't scratch. Yeah, I'm not going to give any examples of that right now, but just it is possible to overcome karma. And in the work that we do, it is often possible to overcome the karma if the person is truly ready to surrender to the fact that, oh, I am going through this because of either things I have done or lessons I have to learn in this life. And then just, where am I? Where am I in this process? What am I coming to? And a lot of times it's helpful to work with someone, even for me, because a lot of times we just don't see where we are in that process. A lot of times it's just not in our awareness because we are who we are. And so sometimes it's helpful to have somebody else point that out. I'm working with someone now, particularly who's a very good healer. And it's a delicate process, but every once in a while I try to point out that I pick up something that says that they're holding on to something in a certain area. They have a certain notion or they have a belief. And, I just try to delicately point out that perhaps they could view that situation a little differently and let go of that karma. Because they know all the big stuff. They got all the big stuff. Now they're down to the really, really, really subtle stuff. And it's a heavy karma. They really had to deal with some stuff. But they're doing very, very, very well with it. So let's get down to being then. When we were working last month, as I was working with the group, I perceived I won't say all, I received a number of karmic influences on people. And then just slipped into being. And in doing so, asked that whatever might change to relieve the karma, to bring about resolution of this lesson take place. And I felt this huge shift take place. It was just really beautiful. And each person got what they needed to be able to function in a more healthy manner, mind, body, or spirit, their sense of being. And it was really great. I was just so happy we had done that, and happy to be reminded through the experience of operating from that level of being where anything and everything might change. And what we're going to do in the group clearing session here in just a couple of minutes is to look at whatever we need to change and see if we can get to that level where we pay the debt and paying the debt. I don't like the phrase paying the debt. I use it, but I don't like it because it's not like you shell out a bunch of money or something, a degree of suffering. It's like, how much do I have to suffer? It's more on the level of the awareness of, oh, I am holding on to this in the relative, and relative is the created part of us, the being, the body, mind, and spirit, and need to let go of that so that I can just be and accept where I'm at. So we will work to try to get to that level. And for those of you who are viewing this online and are not, meaning after the webinar is over, or reviewing this, if you need help, be sure and contact me, and we'll help you working as a partner, help you overcome the karma and the lessons, and enjoy more health and well-being. So with that, I'm going to just check to see if any questions. Anybody have any questions? By the way, if you address your question to host and panelists in the chat function, then I'm the only one that sees it, so it's private. I'm not even sure there is a way to get to the group. No, everyone. Yeah, you can click everyone. And I guess you can click individuals too. Yeah, look at that. Okay. So if you just click host and panelists, you can keep it private if you feel you need to. And I'll give you just a few seconds on that. Any questions about what I've said so far? Otherwise, we will get down to business here. Okay, I don't see any typing, so if anybody, well, I don't see any message. If you're typing, go ahead and send it and then finish it if you need to. So I know you're doing it. Okay. All right, nobody is sending. So I'm going to end the recording here.